1,005 faculty vacancies for nursing programs. 86% of schools plan to hire new faculty. 79.4% of schools experience difficulty in recruiting and hiring. And listen to this last statistic. Reasons for hiring challenges: 34% of schools report that they do not have enough qualified faculty. These are all statistical data points that were shared during the NLN annual survey of schools of nursing highlights from the 2021 to 2022 report. It's no surprise to us nurse educator colleagues that there continues to be challenges when onboarding new faculty. Dr. Sellers Educate is on a mission to help support more nurse educators to achieve success on the CNE exam and to master the competencies that are outlined by NLN in order for us to be equipped with the knowledge, the skills, and ability to be a really good nurse educator in the classroom. Welcome back, everybody, to Dr. Sellers Educate. We're happy that you're back as we continue to support your needs and moving forward towards achieving mastery as a nurse educator. The statistics are alarming for sure, but for many, it may just be validating an already major issue that we know exists in our nursing education system. We're going to take a look at some of those pitfalls and barriers to advancing our skills and knowledge to achieve certification by NLN. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to our channel so you'll be notified every single time there's a new episode. We are going to be using a new technology, maybe to some of you. For some of you, it may be just part of the routine process that you follow in your classroom, and that is using an active response system. The one that we are going to use for our time together is going to be Poll Everywhere. So if this is a new technology for you, then we highly encourage you to take a look at polleverywhere.com. And that's where you're going to see the option for you to set up your own account for free. All right, we like free, and we want to expose you to other opportunities maybe that you haven't had in the past. So as we take a look at Poll Everywhere, we're going to take you behind the scenes. I know that's exciting, right? We're going to take you behind the scenes to kind of look at what the steps are in the process that you'll need to follow to set up your Poll Everywhere account. All right, so here we go. First step is once you log into polleverywhere.com, you're going to see information about the different options that you have when it comes to establishing or setting up an activity. We have used Poll Everywhere, some of us within Dr. Sellers Educate, for more than 2 decades, okay? So we've seen a lot of changes with Poll Everywhere. Some of us use a system called Slido. So whatever system you're using for active engagement of learning, also known as active response systems, you just want to make sure you do 2 things when you consider technology. Number 1 is that you do receive the proper training you need to be competent in engaging your learners in how to use that technology. A major contributing factor to a barrier for learning is us as faculty not being accustomed to the technology in a way that we're able to troubleshoot with our students and really allowing technology to enrich the learning experience, okay? And then the number 2 reason is because we are challenged with troubleshooting with our students. So it can be a barrier to the learning experience. And number 2, we can become frustrated because we may not be as competent and comfortable with the technology. Okay, so don't allow that to happen to you. Make sure you use your resources to help you figure out any nuances with the technology that may be a difficulty for you. All right, so go back to Poll Everywhere. Again, you're going to go to polleverywhere.com to set up an account. And then you're going to click on the different type of activity options that you have here. You will see a number of them. One that we really like is word cloud. Of course, multiple choices and option, Q&A, surveys, open-ended questions. So there are lots of different options that you have when it comes to the different types of activity. All right, so for our specific thought-provoking question today, we're going to focus on a post-clinical activity. All right, so let's see how you do with this thought-provoking question. One thing I want to point out before we go to the question is what you see on your screen, okay? First of all, you're going to activate the poll. This will allow your students to participate. I always recommend that you also bring along your cell phone. Okay, so take your cell phone with you so that you can kind of test it out. So you can see here on the screen, you have a QR code. That's an option, but there are other options as well in case the QR code doesn't work. I know that only happens to me. But you also have the texting feature option here. Okay, so they can follow that. Or they can also choose just to go to a tab on their computer and type in this access to your specific Poll Everywhere platform. Okay, so this is a unique ID to you. And then what you want to do after you activate is just to go ahead and present on the screen if you're in a virtual situation, or if you're in person as well, this works. So you want to go ahead and present to the students whatever the activity is. So let's take a look at this thought-provoking question. So we're looking at post-clinical activities, okay, with this one, and it says, which post-clinical activity would best help learners connect with learning objectives? We have number one, completing flashcards for the medications that their assigned client takes. Number two, discussing the pathophysiology of the client's diagnosis and two interventions. Number three, completing a reflection journal entry focused on clinical experiences. Or number four, writing a 5-page paper detailing their client's diagnosis and pathophysiology with references. All right, so right now the poll may or may not be activated for you, but again, what you would want to do is just go over with students again how to use the poll. Make sure you have your cell phone nearby so you can participate and test it out and make sure that the poll is working properly. All right, so that's how you would use Poll Everywhere to increase engagement. Again, this is an active response system type of teaching strategy to best engage students in the classroom. As we continue to explore what are those primary pitfalls and barriers to learning, we're going to take a look at 4 key components on your journey as you move forward. Number one, where do I start? Number two, what are those top 3 pitfalls that I want to make sure I avoid? Number 3, what are those top gap areas that I want to hone in on? And number 4, what are the resources that I need to ensure I am successful? So these are 4 categories as you're moving forward on your journey that you want to consider in order to be fully prepared to master the exam by achieving a passing score. All right, so let's dig deep into some of these key elements as you think about what your next steps are going to be. What do you need to be successful on your journey? So first is going to be a study plan. We have a 7-week study plan that you can access right here within the description. It will take you to our website. You do need a study workbook. Now you have a couple of options. We have designed a study workbook based on feedback from our early adopters, okay? And we also have a success community that we can provide to support you on your journey. One of the major factors to overcoming some of the obstacles that we experience when we either delay taking the CNE exam or we take the CNE exam not being fully prepared and it results in us not being successful. One of the key contributors based on our success framework is having a community to support you. Now, there are 2 primary ways that we want you to consider establishing that community. Number 1 is to find colleagues right there at your university that have been successful on the CNE exam. Okay, so having them right next to you, or at least having access to them so that they can, number 1, help you stay encouraged, and number 2, help you with any of the muddy points that you may have. Now, if you're like me, and when I was on my journey, I really didn't have a community that could support me at the university because there were very few nurse educator colleagues that were certified. We here at Dr. Sellers Educate are able to support you as you move forward by consistently offering a monthly community through our monthly boot camp to help you achieve success. Okay, so you have support here if you need it, and it's not at your university. Do know that you have options. So the first question we want to address is really looking at the frustration that's associated with how you get started. Well, a journey is about 3 key steps. First is, how do you get started? Okay, so if you never get started, then there's no way we can cross that finish line. We're going to talk about how you get started. That second consideration is what happens between the beginning and the end. So it's great. You figure out where to start, you figure out what your journey is going to look like when you get to the end and what the celebration is going to look like, but it's that in between. So what happens between start and finishing? That can cause a lot of frustration. So how do you overcome that? What are the strategies that you're going to use? The second emotion that we're going to talk about really is the feelings associated with being overwhelmed, intimidated, or stuck. How many of us have been in a situation where we didn't know which way to turn when it comes to achieving success? So what happens? Well, we end up staying in neutral and going nowhere. Okay, one of the key ways to overcome the feeling of being overwhelmed, intimidated, or stuck is to have a solid 7-week study plan. And what happens if it becomes 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks? It's okay. The goal is that you have at least an outline of what your journey is going to look like to keep you moving forward, even though life gets in the way, and we know that happens. So again, the number one way to becoming unstuck, decreasing intimidation, and decreasing that feeling of overwhelm is to have a solid study plan. Okay, next, let's talk about a very common question is, how do I avoid failing the CNE exam in 2023? Well, one of the key steps is making sure you have the right resources. Okay, so that's going to include primarily 2 resources. That is going to be Dr. Caputi's CNE review book, and it is the 2nd edition right now, and also Billings and Halstead Teaching and Nursing. Okay, right now it's the 6th edition. We do expect the 7th edition to come out in 2024, but for right now, 2023, we're recommending those as the 2 primary resources that are going to help you close those knowledge gaps. So how can you avoid failing? Make sure you have the right resources, have a 7-week study plan, and have a community of support. So we want to tell you a little bit about Lisa's story, okay, because it may resonate with some of you out there. We're always appreciative of the transparency that you all provide for those that have been unsuccessful. And listen, we have a no judgment zone here. We are here to support you, and that is our service guarantee until you are successful. We highly encourage you to subscribe and to come back right here on our channel every single week so that you can stay focused and move forward on your journey. So let's talk a little bit about Lisa. What happened with Lisa is she was unsuccessful, and Lisa was unsuccessful because she had a lot of competing priorities. One of the major competing priorities is that she was very stressed and felt very overwhelmed because she needed to be successful in order to keep her job. Now think about that. If one exam is going to determine whether or not you keep your job, do you think you're going to have some feelings of overwhelmingness? Do you think you're going to have some anxiety? Absolutely. We partnered with Lisa to help her move forward in order for her to achieve success. Lisa was ashamed when she came to us, and because at that point she had already been unsuccessful. Lisa felt like she had a great plan to help her move forward to close her knowledge gaps. She had spent a considerable amount of time studying, using resources, not the right resources, which was a contributing factor to her not being successful. So what do we do with Lisa? We helped her map out a plan. We came alongside her, guided her through the process to ensure that she was going to, number 1, close all of her knowledge gaps. Number 2, to engage in some of these firsthand experiences to help her be successful. And then number 3, we helped build up her confidence and her competence to ensure she was mentally prepared to be successful on the exam. So when Lisa achieved success, we were very excited to celebrate with her. So when we go back to the initial question that we had and looking at, okay, so what is the contributing factor that leads to the frustration of knowing where to start? It is the feeling of overwhelm. We don't know where to start. We know how we want to finish, and that's with success, but we don't know where to start. Well, you're starting today. Okay, today is a new day. It is time for you to move forward using the study worksheet that's right in front of you. Again, if you don't have it yet, it's right here in the description. Print it out. Write down today's date. Commit to achieving excellence as a nurse educator, knowing that you now have a support system that will help you every step of the way. No judgment, just focusing on achieving success. All right, so now let's take a look at our thought-provoking question as we think about from our poll everywhere, what are the next steps that we want to take on our journey to ensure that we are closing knowledge gaps? All right, so here we go. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again, and you should be able to see, we'll see how it works. You should be able to see the correct answer to the question. All right, so completing a reflection journal entry focused on clinical experiences is going to be the best option. So let's talk about rationale. When you think about the emotions that you have tied to a standardized exam, if you have a heightened level of emotion, whether it's anxiety from taking a test or just using a computer, and it's been a long time since you've used a computer to take a test, we encourage you to consider the NLN self-assessment exam. Now, there are two benefits to the self-assessment exam. First, I want to add a disclaimer that NLN says clearly on their website that there is no relationship between how you score on the SAE and your performance on the CNE exams, okay? But there are two considerations when you think about whether or not the SAE is right for you. Number one, if you have a lot of anxiety about taking exams, especially computerized exams. And number two, if you just want more experience with practice questions, then the SAE may be a great choice for you. What you will also find with the SAE is that you will receive a report that includes rationale for the incorrect and correct answers, which is what we're going to do right now. So number one, if you chose completing flashcards for the medications that their assigned client takes, that should be a preclinical activity, right? Not a post-clinical. You want to make sure you do two things. Remember, when you're looking at your questions, even when you're looking at thought-provoking questions with us, the SAE or Dr. Caputi's CNE review book questions at the end of every chapter, think about two things. Number one, what is this question asking me? Being clear about the specific phase of the clinical activity, which this one specifies the post-clinical activity. And number two, you want to consider what is it that you know for sure about the content included in this question. All right, so then we have number two, discussing the pathophysiology of the client's diagnosis and two interventions. Well, that's not a bad thing, right, to talk about post-clinical, but usually the bulk of the conversation happens during the preclinical activity. All right, but it could be that there's a debriefing process, right, that allows the students to talk about the pathophysiology of the patients they took care of. But let's keep going. So looking at number 4, before we talk about the correct answer, writing a 5-page paper detailing their client's diagnosis and pathophysiology with references. Well, that's usually not an activity associated with the clinical experience, so that's why number 4 would not be correct. So looking at number 3, there are essentially two components that make this the best option, okay? And if this is a muddy point for you, let me go ahead and give you a reference. Billings and Halstead, take a look on page 299, where it has reflection and journal writing. You will see a couple of key areas. Number 1, the section at the very beginning of each of these teaching strategies that are included in chapter 16 talks about what that specific activity is and a little bit of history associated with it and why exactly it is determined to be an evidence-based teaching strategy, okay? And then second, it gives you teaching tips, advantages and disadvantages of each of the teaching strategies, okay? So page 299 for reflection and journal writing, if this is a muddy point for you or if you chose something different. So number 1, reflection journals are a great post-clinical activity to allow students to really connect the dots and clarify, hopefully, any muddy points that they may have because we're giving them feedback regarding their journals. The second clue that indicates that this is the best answer is alignment, okay? You see that it not only calls out an evidence-based teaching strategy for the clinical experience, but it also maps back and aligns with the actual objective, okay? So it is focused on clinical experiences that are tied to or should be tied to the learning objectives, okay? So that's why 3 is the best answer. It talks about it describes alignment with the learning objectives and the clinical experiences, and it engages in an evidence-based teaching strategy, which would be a reflection journal entry. All right, so hopefully that was not too much of a muddy point for you all, but if it was, do again, make sure you go back and take a look at Billings and Halstead in chapter 16 overall, but specifically reflective journals is going to be on page 299. All right, so as we wrap up, what are some resources to help you move forward with next steps? First is the monthly boot camp. You see the link right here in the description. This is going to provide a consistent community every single month. We meet 1 to 2 times and sometimes 3 times. It depends on the semester and really what the request is from our nurse educator colleagues. We focus specifically on a topic that maps back to the detailed test blueprint to ensure there's alignment to help you close your knowledge gaps. Okay, so what if you need more? Okay, so if you're like me, I needed more direction, I needed more support, I needed more guidance. So we have a CNE in 60 days. We have decided, based on feedback, to launch a November cohort. All right, we usually don't do this, but we want to support nurse educators to get certified in 2023 as we anticipate changes in 2024 for the CNE. All right, so we want to make sure that we're supporting you to achieve success in 2023. If you have other questions that have not been addressed in this episode, make sure you reach out to us, info@drsellerseducate.com. We also are available to answer any questions that you have. We have periodic Q&A sessions, so do know that we are here to support you no matter where you are on the journey. You can check out our website, drsellerseducate.com. And until next time, have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.